It is Monday. Happy Monday, everybody. Monday, February the 24th, 2025, 7:11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is episode 317 of McRae Live. UAPs, UFOs, aliens. Are they here? Are they real? Are you ready? I wanted to talk about this topic for a little while and get your thoughts on it, interact with you, get your thoughts on it, what you think about this topic. Now's the time to get your thoughts in. I don't know who's going to tune in tonight, if anybody's going to care, but sometimes it's nice to change it up. Sometimes it's nice to change it up. And this is a topic that interests me. I think it interests most people. I mean, well, not everybody. I mean, there's a lot of people that it doesn't really interest, and they think it's a bunch of hogwash and it's nonsense, and that's totally fine. But the way I want to come at this topic tonight is, from a very grounded, realistic perspective. I'm not somebody, if you followed me for any length of time, I'm not somebody that jumps on bandwagons or goes to the extreme to, famous last words. But I mean, like, in the sense of, jumping on conspiracy theories unnecessarily. Not that we really talk about that here on the channel anyway, but I'm just saying that I think there is a grounded, mature, level-headed way that we can talk about this topic that isn't necessarily going to jump to, lizard people and David Icke and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a middle ground. I think there's somewhere in between that we can, there's lizard people and the world is being run by lizards, and there's somewhere, just a little bit below that. I think we could probably look at this topic from that perspective, because I think it's important. Once you start talking about, it goes off the rails for me. It goes off the rails. Folks, welcome to episode 317 of McRae Live. My name's Dave McRae. Thank you for joining me. If you're watching live or after the fact, welcome, welcome, welcome. And as per usual, if you want to send in a super chat, you can help support the channel. I really appreciate it. I will get to your super chats towards the end when I open the floor up. We can, we talk about all this kind of stuff. Member chats as well, of course. If you're a member on the channel, one of those. If you want to become a member on the channel, hit that join button. One of the perks, of course, is that you get to send in member chats, and it's highlighted in green, and that, of course, takes care of that. So UFOs, UAPs, UFOs, for many years we knew it as UFOs, unidentified flying objects, of course, and a UFO became really just a synonym for aliens. I mean, that's really what it was. It's like how Spielberg is really a synonym for Hollywood. You just say it and but in reality, the term UFO, I mean, obviously does have a meaning. It's an acronym, really, right? It's unidentified flying object. And of course, there's a stigma around that, and there is and for good reason, and maybe, maybe it's a little harsh in some areas. But like anything, this is a topic that is muddied. It's just, there's so many different corners and avenues and people that are getting in on it. And there's people that are part of the UFO community that infight with each other. You know what I mean? It's like, it's ridiculous. Like, they're all trying to get to a common goal and seek the truth about what's going on, but yet they're all fucking fighting with each other. Him, I know that guy. I fucking hate that guy. It's just, it's crazy. It's crazy, right? But, and then, abductions and Roswell and the X-Files and aliens and Project Blue Book and Blue Beam and the Blue Balls, whatever the hell it was. There's so many. There's so much stuff, right? It's not even a rabbit hole. I mean, it is it's a rabbit hole that goes to the center of the earth. I mean, it is so convoluted, so crazy, so wild, with so much noise. There's so much noise that it can be really difficult to weed through it and find some sense of a signal when we're talking about the topic of UFOs. And And UFOs, again, there was a stigma that surrounded the world of UFO. And about maybe the last 7 or 8 years or so, at least more commonly, now they're known as UAPs. It was, and I think that was in part, or maybe not in part, maybe solely, to get away from the stigma of UFOs. Again, UFO is just, really, UFO is a synonym for cuckoo, woo, you tinfoil hat, woo, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's really what it became, at the end of the day. And so if you want to take something seriously, it's like, well, how can we get rid of the stigma here? I mean, how can we do this? And so UAPs, it's essentially the same thing for all intents and purposes, but it became UFO. It graduated to UAP, which is unidentified aerial phenomenon. But then they thought, well, hang on a sec here. It may not just be aerial. It may be in the ocean. It may be interdimensional. Who knows? So now it's unidentified anomalous phenomenon. So it just kind of means everything. It could mean, your grandmother's home-baked cookies. Who knows? Okay. All right. So now we have this 21st century UFO acronym. Okay. That's a good start, but there's no doubt in my mind that at some point, eventually, that could become just as cuckoo, you know what I'm saying? I mean, no, you never know, right? So, but that's where we are, right? That's what UAP means, unidentified aerial / anomalous phenomena, whatever, and UFO is still out there, of course, but it's essentially the same thing. And this is a topic that has always interested me ever since I was, a little kid, as it has interested a lot of you. I think it's a good topic. I think it's fun to talk about. It may not generate a lot of buzz here on the channel because, we're a movie channel and people don't, I don't know, they might look at me and go, what the hell is he talking about that for? Who fucking cares? All right, well, whatever. You don't want to tune in? You don't tune in. But I find this stuff really interesting. And it's cool because I do think there is something to this. Now, the problem is that there's a lot of bullshit out there, and there's a lot of probably more than likely intentional bullshit. There's a lot of propaganda. There's a lot of just a lot of nonsense out there too. But it's a topic that has always interested me because I've always been fascinated by space and by galaxies and the universe. And I look at this not from a religious standpoint. Okay. We're not going to be looking at this from the Christianity standpoint. We're not going to be looking at this from, whatever else. I'm not a religious person. I don't care. I don't practice. That's not me. That's you. Great. It's not me. Fair enough. Right. I think at the end of the day, we can look at this from more of a scientific perspective and something that is grounded that we can measure, because if there's a truth that I firmly believe in. And this goes back to a bit of my experience with the paranormal. And I am somebody that does believe, but I will say something else about the word believe here in a second. But I am somebody, based on my experiences, I am somebody that does believe that something does survive the process of death, that consciousness does survive. How long? There's something, I do believe there's enough circumstantial evidence at the very least to point to that there's something going on and that we should look into this more. And I don't mean ghosts, and I mean, it depends how you look at it, but I don't mean it from that Hollywood perspective. You know what I mean? Amityville Horror, the floorboards, moving the walls, bleeding. I mean, that's all fun and that's great, but I'm talking about it from a real sort of kind of, more mature, more grounded kind of thing. And that's how I've always looked at things. But many years ago, when I began writing the screenplay to Port Robinson Road, I wanted it to be a more grounded, mature. It's a horror film for all intents and purposes. It's scary, full of my mood and atmosphere and all that kind of stuff. But it has a very strong philosophical, elevated, component to it, because I didn't want it to just be this pedestrian haunted house movie we've seen 5,000 times. What's the fun in that shit? And so one of the things I learned very early on, and this relates to all, the UFOs and the UAPs and all that kind of stuff, is having a belief in something is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Whether, you can have a belief in whatever. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is in your life, and it can bring a lot of comfort to a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with that. I celebrate that. However, having a belief in something is not evidence of that something's existence. You can believe in a cookie monster on the cloud, in the clouds, but your belief is not the evidence of its existence. And so I do believe something does survive the process of death, but my belief is not the evidence. The evidence would be objectively measured by, as we know right now, how we're able to measure things by the five senses, right? Touch, smell, hear, taste, see. And so unless we can do that, then it will remain an anomaly. Now, but that doesn't mean that there aren't things about this universe and about the world and about life and how life is and what happens after or what dimensions and universes and galaxies that we don't understand. Like, we don't know it all. I mean, we literally don't know it all, right? And so what appears supernatural right now may very well just be a natural part of our world that we have yet to figure out. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that there's some supernatural. I mean, listen, many things that are natural now in the world were very supernatural to us human beings thousands of years ago, right? You know what I mean? And so, and then of course, as we evolved and we got smarter and, through scientific discoveries and measuring and all, we discovered, oh, this is just normal. This is a part of our life. This is a part of the weather. This is a part of how the world works. This is a part of how the earth operates. This is a part of the universe. This is a part, it's not some big, gigantic, godlike deity coming down and spewing. No, it's rain. That's how so, I do believe that there is still a lot more about our universe in that way that we have obviously yet to figure out, right? Science is always evolving. It's not set in stone, right? It's science. The answers we have with science are based on what we know now. Right? What we know and how we know things work now, right? But that doesn't mean that in the future, and I'm talking about like things that could not like hard truths, right? About how your eyes work. I mean things like, more of the supernatural type things, right? And how the universe works, right? I mean, we're still like, based on what we know, the universe is about 13.6 billion years old. But that could change once we get further along in our discoveries in the James Webb Telescope. And oh, you know what? It's not actually 13.6 billion years old. It's actually 22.6 billion. Well, you said it was 13.6. Yeah, based on what we knew then, right? Yeah, that's how it works. That's how science works, folks. You're allowed to evolve and change your mind once new information becomes available to you. And I think the UFO phenomenon is an interesting one. So I set the stage by saying all of this because for those of you that may not know, I like to look at these topics from that perspective. It's fun to romanticize and it's fun to tell stories and all that kind of stuff. And I'm right there with you. I think it's great. But you can only go around in so many circles. Like, I want to know what's going on. Don't you? I want to know the truth. Don't you? And we can get lost in the romanticism of the stories and the abductions and the creepiness. And I saw this and this guy saw that and all the anecdotal stuff, which is important, which is great. And I really like that. It's not that it's not important. But at some point, we've got to go beyond that and think bigger, right? And start to think about the things a little more, on a little more broader sort of scale. Think about these things from a bit of a scientific perspective and think about this in a bigger picture sense, which I find really interesting and fascinating. And so, do I believe that aliens exist? Well, when you say that to somebody, do you believe that aliens exist? Immediately, the thing that pops into my head, thanks to the pop culture zeitgeist, is green men, big heads, or the grays with the big eyes. Do I believe those people exist? I have no idea. I really have no idea. Do I believe, remember, belief is not evidence of something's existence, but do I believe that there is life on other planets? Oh, yes, of course. I can't prove it, but do I believe? Yes, just based on sheer probability. A few years ago, the James Webb Space Telescope took a photo. You've probably seen it. I should have brought it up here, but you can Google it. It's that photo of all those galaxies, right? You know what I mean? It's like this. It's like a square, right? And all these galaxies, like thousands of galaxies. And of course, we're looking back in time. we're looking like billions and billions of years into the past, because, you know, some of these galaxies we're seeing in that photo don't even exist anymore. And so, like, that's fascinating shit, right? And it blew my mind when I read that photo is of, like, if you were to take a grain of sand, right? Or was it a dime? Maybe it was a dime. I can't remember. It was something really, really tiny. And hold your arm out like this, right? Hold your arm out like that. Close your one eye. Hold it up to the sky on a blue, you know, just hold it to the sky. And that little pinpoint kind of thing, that is what you're seeing in that image. That's all the galaxies in that part of the... Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Thousands of galaxies in that little part of the sky? I mean, it is mind-boggling. We can't even fathom it. We can't even understand it. Like, no, don't even pretend, because you can't. You think you can, but you can't. We can't, it's so discombobulating. Like, we can't even wrap our mind around that. It is wild. The universe is so big. It is so massive. And, you know, to think that all that exists in just this little dot in the, I mean, the universe is teeming with galaxies, trillions. I think it's like 2 trillion they estimate now, or something like that. We can't even fathom that. You can't even fathom that. It's absolutely insane. And every galaxy has hundreds of billions and billions of stars. And those hundreds of billions of stars all have planets around them. I mean, it's insane. So, you know, do I believe that there is other life out there? Yes. The sheer probability that other life exists, 100%. I mean, maybe it's not 100%, but I mean, it's got to be pretty damn close. And then the next question becomes, well, what type of life, right? I mean, there's intelligent life, and then there's microbes. There's, you know, microscopic, you know, life, right? And so there's intelligent life like us, right? You know, bipedal, walking around. Hey, what's going on, Bob? Hey, Bill, what's going on? We are cognitively aware of our own mortality. We're the only species, at least so far, that I believe is that is actually objectively, cognitively aware of their own mortality. Your cat and dog doesn't know that they're going to die. Now, they may know when they're dying and when they get really sick and they're, you know, all, but it's not like, you know, you adopt a kitten and your kitten knows it's only got, you know, 18 years on this planet and then it's gone. They don't know that, right? So we are very intelligent beings, you know, that are aware of our own mortality. And as far as we know, the most intelligent beings to walk the face of the earth. And so, you know, are there other aliens out there like us? Well, maybe. There could be. You know, in the movies, it's always depicted as bipedal humanoids, which is interesting, because who's to say that they're humanoid? That's what I really liked about the movie Arrival, actually, is that it was depicted not as humanoid at all, because who's to say it's going to look like us? Why are they bipedal with eyes and heads? And then there's that whole idea of, well, maybe they're us from the future. Maybe they're us from the future. Maybe. But evolutionary wise, to, you know, for the conditions to be right and to evolve, life could evolve on other planets, but it may not evolve in the same way. There could be intelligent life on other planets that look very different from us, very different from us. You know, they may not be bipedal at all. They may be light or plants or I don't know. Like, I mean, it doesn't, you know, who knows, right? So yeah, I do believe, just based on probability, that there is life on other planets. There may even be life in our galaxy, you know, but we don't know, right? I mean, according to science, as right now, they've yet to discover life on other planets. Most scientists probably believe that the first sign of life will be, you know, microbes and things like that. But who knows, right? I mean, you know, you never know. Now, when it comes to the topic of UAPs and UFOs, this is how here's what I think about this. I believe that most, like, and when I say most, I mean like above 90%, well above 90% of the recent UAPs, UFOs, are man-made. I don't believe that they're extraterrestrial at all. That doesn't mean that they perhaps do not have alien technology, right? Who knows? But if you want my honest opinion, I don't believe at all that, the United States government has, what's going on? I don't know. I don't buy it at all. But these things are compartmentalized, right? And, there are a lot of black ops, black budget projects. There's a lot of shit that goes on. When you have a lot of money, there's a lot, the president of the United States may be a very powerful man, but there's a lot of shit they don't tell the president, and so there's a lot of stuff that I think goes on. The military industrial complex and the whole, it's a very, very scary, dark, evil place when you start to dive and go down the rabbit hole and how much is known and how much is compartmentalized and how much, do I believe that all of these, UAPs that are flying around are aliens from other planets just coming to visit? No, not at all. I think that it is more likely, when you apply Occam's razor, I think it is more likely that most of, maybe even all, maybe all of them, I don't know, but most of them are probably black op, drones, testing out new technology. And you could say, well, then how come, the military doesn't know anything about it? Why would they? Why would they? Why would the Air Force need to know about it? They're not going to know about it. They may shoot them up into the air to test them against the military, to test them against what we have. I'm not going to tell them about it. No, we want to get up there and test them. And they're so far advanced over anything any country has that they're not worried about, crashing into you or anything like that. Because whatever, we can go up there and fly around and do whatever. And now there's no evidence of this, right? There's no evidence of it. But this is what based on everything I've read, based on everything I'm seeing, I think this is more likely that it is most of the UAPs that are coming out now is just kind of strange. It's weird. Look at that. It's flying on us. Yeah, it might be weird to the pilots. It may very well be weird to these Air Force pilots. 100%. I'm not saying that they're lying and saying, I don't know what the fuck that is. No, they probably don't know what it is. They probably have no idea what it is. But do I think that, like, for example, the Tic Tac, incident, right? Do I think that it's alien and it's there and it's, do I think all of a sudden, maybe, maybe, but do I think likely? Probably not. It's probably not. It's probably ours. When I say ours, I mean human, right? It's probably ours. And, doing tests and running around and testing out the Mach 436,000, whatever it is, right? And of course, you have to do that in secret. The technology is so life-changing. It is so life-changing that people will murder to keep this quiet. That's what I think is more likely. When you look at the history of human beings, the history of, just even the last 100 years, when you look at, the war, the Cold War between the U.S. and the USSR and Russia, and what they were keeping from each other, and who's going to go to the moon first, it's interesting. I was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson not too long ago, and he said something that I absolutely believe in, or that I absolutely agree with, which I thought was an interesting point. And he said, I'm paraphrasing all of this, but he said, somebody asked him, why haven't we been back to the moon? The whole moon landing and faking the moon landing and all that conspiracy, that's for another day. Okay. We'll save that for another day. But I just mean that, the question, which is a good one, which is, well, we haven't been back to the moon since 1970, 2 or 3. Why haven't we been back? We went like 6 times in 4 years. We haven't been back. Like, what the hell's going on here? Like, why haven't we, what's going on? And Neil deGrasse Tyson said something that I thought was actually a really good point. He said, well, what's the incentive? He says, in the 60s, it was an arms race. It was who's going to get to the moon first. The Russians were the first to put a living thing in space, which I think was the dog, right? They were the first to put a person in space, right? And Kennedy was like, we will go to the moon before the end of the decade, or whatever he said, right? And it was a game. It was us against them. It was the West against, it was the rebels against the empire. It was, you gotta get and there was this incentive. There was this war going on, this Cold War, right? And there was this incentive, and he said, but it's over. He says, I mean, what for scientific exploration? And it's like, yeah, you would like to think that, yes, for scientific exploration, but that's usually not how it goes. You would like to think that everybody is virtuous, and there are people that really care about science, and there are people that really care about of course there are, right? I'm not painting everybody with a broad brush, okay? Of course there are people that care about science and the discovery and mankind and going out there and for the betterment of humanity and figuring it out and exploring worlds. And of course those people exist, but they're not usually the governments. They're not, I mean, usually there's gotta be some sort of, what? What are you saying? What, you mean China's gonna get to there first? Well, we can't let that happen. We're the fucking United States of America. America, yeah. And then it's like, then now there's this thing going on, and now we gotta, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's, he didn't say it like that. I'm sprucing it up. But he basically said, well, what's the incentive now, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. We've lost our well, we can't let that happen. We gotta go, and so, I mean, that really was if the Russians were not threatening to go to the moon first in the 60s, would we have even gone at all? I mean, really think about that. I mean, I'm not saying we wouldn't have. I'm just saying that if there wasn't that threat and that Cold War of, oh yeah, well, your dad's bigger than mine. Oh yeah, well, your dad's fatter than my dad. Oh yeah, well, and we're going to get to who's going to get to the moon first? I mean, would we have gone? I don't know. But there's a lot of shit that goes on, right? There's a lot of geopolitical shit, a lot of deep dive, just a lot of crazy stuff. And so I do believe that most of the UAPs that we are seeing, most of the UFOs that we see, most of the UFOs we've probably seen ever probably have been ours. Again, when I say I know I'm Canadian, you're American, or you're English or wherever you are in the world. But when I say ours, I'm talking about, mankind, right? It's likely ours. Now the question then becomes, is this technology that we've discovered on our own, that we have evolved on our own through natural processes, or is this back engineered technology that we have discovered because we have discovered an alien crash? Maybe aliens, and let's not forget, aliens don't have, if we want to think about aliens as extraterrestrial, right, and they live on other planets, unless they can traverse, the universe and the galaxy with technology that we just don't understand, wormholes and all that kind of stuff, bending, space-time. Okay, maybe. But if they can't do that, and they're not, and not every, alien species would necessarily be as, the same level of, as advanced. There might be species out there that are behind us in technological advancements. There are species probably ahead of us. Who knows where we sit, on that pole, but maybe some of these things are probes, right? We send probes. We send probes to the moon, to Mars, to other planets. Voyager 1 is out of the solar system now. It was launched in the late 70s. I think it exited the solar system. It took what, like 30 years or something like that? That's that probe that took that great shot, the last photo it ever took, I believe, when it turned around and it took that shot, the pale blue dot, and you just see Earth as a tiny speck. And it's so, it makes you realize how crazy everything really is and how small we really are. And it's out of the solar system now. So it's past Pluto. It's gone. And we'll never get it back. It's gone. And so, we send probes out. Who's to say that these aren't probes? Maybe they're probes. Maybe some of these things are genuinely extraterrestrial, but they're probes. They're not necessarily, Now, of course, you fast forward to 2000 and, the 2020s and the most recent, things going on in the U.S. and the whistleblowers and David Grush and all these former, military. This is nothing new, by the way. These former military, this kind of stuff has been happening for years. Now it's just getting sort of Capitol Hill attention, I guess. But I mean, it's interesting, to hear what these people have to say. I always take everything with a grain of salt. I don't fully believe one way or the other, because I also know that, there are narratives at play and there are stories at play. And sometimes our governments and the world like to shape things and shape narratives and normalize things and normalize, geopolitical issues and drip feed certain things and to be able to control information. And so, who knows who's working for who and, what's going on. So I always try to not gravitate so emotionally to one side or the other. And I do that to protect myself. I do that to protect my emotions by getting too excited about something and then let down, or getting too excited about something and then feeling embarrassed when, I've been had or something like that. But I try to look at it as objectively and as grounded as I can. Obviously, I have my biases and I think about certain things, but I never try to get like, oh, did you hear the full source? Well, it must be true. It's like, well, okay. Oh, yeah, it's interesting. There might be some truth to it. But why now? Why are they coming out now? What's going on? Why now? What else is going on in the world? What's happening right now? Why are they doing this? What's going on? Where's the disrupt? What's going on? You have to keep your wits about you. You do. And that's why I usually always take a very centrist approach to a lot of things. It's not a cop-out. It's not because I don't believe in certain things or don't fall on certain sides of issues. I do, like we all do. But I always try to maintain a level head because, governments, ladies and gentlemen, have been manipulating their citizens for thousands of years, literally thousands of years. Why would we think it would stop now? Why would we think that all of it, what now, all of a sudden, now in the 21st century? No, that doesn't happen anymore. No, that doesn't happen anymore. We're all virtuous. We're all wonderful. God bless America. And I say that with anybody, any country. You know what I mean? I'm just, but it's just like, why would we think that some level of that? I mean, does it happen like it did, during the Roman Empire? I mean, maybe not. I don't know. Or maybe it's worse now. I don't know. But that's my point, is that we can't just fully believe and buy into everything. We gotta, you gotta be like, okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, look what's happening now in the world. That's interesting. I'll put it at the back of my head. You take note of it. You look into it. You read about it. You take note of it. That's kind of who I am, because I never want to be like, oh my God, oh, it's totally real. Oh, and then it's like I've lost all sense of critical thinking. Do you know what I mean? I've always been that way. And maybe it's because I grew up with my dad, like I said. And obviously as a journalist and a reporter, he was a very critical thinker. He had to be. So I learned a lot of lessons from him, but I think it's important. But it is interesting what's going on right now. And, but I will say, I do believe, and again, belief is not evidence, but based on, all the things I've heard and read and seen and watched, I do believe that there is something going on. And what I mean by something going on, I do mean something extraterrestrial going on. But I'm not fully convinced it's extraterrestrial. Now, this might sound a little crazy. I'm totally open-minded to the possibility of something interdimensional. And I don't mean that from a Hollywood perspective. You know what I mean? I mean that from, as grounded as we can possibly get when we talk about dimensions, right? We live in a three-dimensional world, right? And I got to be careful here because I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent or I might spoil my own movie. But, there's possibilities and things out there about other dimensions, other planes of existence. Look at Interstellar, which I thought was a great way to sort of illustrate that. Maybe I'll just say this, right? Okay, so an ant. I've talked about this before, so I feel fine talking about this. So an ant basically lives in a two-dimensional world. Now, they live in their world is basically two-dimensional. They live in a three-dimensional world, which is ours. But an ant can go backwards and forwards. Obviously, it can crawl up. Maybe an ant's not the best example, but let's just take, there's a creature that lives in a two-dimensional world, okay? And that creature, okay, can go forward and backwards and left and right, right? That creature can go forward and backwards, left and right. But that creature has no idea of what up or down even means. Has no idea what up or down even means. No idea. Couldn't visualize it, couldn't contextualize it, couldn't intellectualize it, doesn't understand it. Up? Well, what do you mean by up? I've never heard of that word. Up? Down? What does that mean? I'm going to go down. I don't even know what that means. Because this creature lives in two, it knows forward, backwards, left, and right. That's it. That's it. That's it. That's it. Well, now I come along. Now I live in a three-dimensional world, right? I go left, right, backwards and forwards, up and down. I live in a three-dimensional world. I can look at this creature. Okay, the sun is shining down on this creature. The sun's shining down on this creature, casting a shadow on the ground. And all of a sudden, I step in front of the sun and I cast a shadow over this creature. This creature would not know where the hell that shadow came from. The creature could not look up to see me because they're incapable of doing that. They live in a two-dimensional world. They would just see this shadow on the ground. They'd be like, where the fuck did this thing come from? What the hell is this? Right? And then all of a sudden I decide to step out of the sunlight and the shadow's gone. And this little creature would go home to all his little creature friends and be like, you're not going to fucking believe what happened to me today. And they're like, whoa, what happened? I'm out there, I'm gardening, I'm just doing my shit, right? And all of a sudden this shadow, it's like the sun disappeared. What, the sun disappeared? The shadow was there. It was like a UFO. It was crazy. It was like all around. Are you fucking kidding me? No, I'm dead serious. It was, oh no, fuck, shut up. Shut up. Shut up, Bob. Shut up. Cuckoo. Tinfoil hat, Bob. I'm telling you right now. Because they live in a two-dimensional world. They would have no idea what. Well, maybe, just maybe that's what it's like in this situation. We live in a three-dimensional world. If there are beings that live in now I know the fourth dimension is considered time, but a fourth spatial dimension, or a fifth dimension, or a 10th dimension, or a ninth dimension, whatever it is, we don't understand what that means. We can't even conceptualize that. We can't. I know there's the Tesseract and we can all, but you're looking at a Tesseract on a 3D screen. Okay, you're looking at a four-dimensional image. We don't know what it means. We don't even know what that means. So maybe, just maybe, there are other intelligence that are in another spatial dimension than us and can look down on us and infect our world in ways that feel weird. But really, it's not. We can't understand. We can't intellectualize. We don't know what's going on, right? And so I look at it from that perspective a little bit and think to myself, maybe there's something going on here. I mean, maybe there's something to that. Yeah, we can talk about little green men and alien abductions and fire in the sky, which of course is the thumbnail on the show today. Yeah, we can talk about all that, sure. But, maybe there's something to this. Maybe there's, we can... Do you know what I mean? Like maybe we see shit and we're like, where did that come from? Where'd it go? I don't know. Did you see it? I saw it. Now it's gone. Yeah, because we can't, because it's momentarily entering our three-dimensional world and then going back into its 10th dimensional world, whatever it is. And we would be like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And we would be just as this little creature named Bob would. I don't know what's going on. The shadow was over me. It was just crazy. It was crazy, Dave. It was crazy. It's like, are you kidding me? No, it was crazy. It was a shadow. It was gone. It was like a UFO. I find that stuff really interesting. And that's how I kind of think about this stuff now. I'm not saying there are not bipedal humanoid extraterrestrials that fly spaceships and enter our atmosphere and land and come out and have big heads and big eyes and speak to you telepathically. And I'm not saying, I don't know. I'm not saying that that's not what happens. But it really was only the last 5 or 6 years or so that I really started to think about it more interdimensionally. More like, maybe we're looking down the wrong rabbit hole. Maybe there's something, maybe it's not, maybe they've always been here. Maybe we share the earth with them. Maybe we do. And it feels alien to us, of course, because we're like, what's going on? You know what I mean? But maybe it's really not, And of course, that I find really fascinating and really interesting. I'm not saying, again, there's no evidence of this. I'm not saying that that's exactly what's going on. I still believe that well over 90% of the UAPs and the UFOs that we see, that people see, are man-made. They are black op government, deep black secret top, like the president is not even, on a need to know. Like, no, fuck the president of the United States. Like, no. No. And I'm not saying that because it's Trump. I'm saying that with anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. No. President? No. No, the president doesn't have it. No. Sorry, Mr. President. I'm the president of the fucking United States. Yeah. No. You know, like that's what I'm talking about, right? And that shit exists. Like there's deep, deep stuff that goes on like that. And so that's what I tend to think most of this likely is. But that doesn't mean that two things can't be true at the same time. Like I always say here on the channel, right? Two things can be true at the same time. And I believe that, you know, there could be two things going on here, right? I mean, maybe this is back engineered technology. Maybe we have discovered something, you know, whether it is from another planet and another solar system or even our own, well, it wouldn't be our own solar system necessarily, but our own galaxy. Or maybe it is from our own galaxy. Maybe they're from, you know, what's that, Alpha Centauri or whatever the one is, the closest star, I think. Maybe it's, who knows? Maybe they are extraterrestrial. But maybe they're not. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're interdimensional. And I don't mean Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull interdimensional. Well, you never know. You know, maybe they're just, you know, I don't know. It's fascinating to think about. It's fascinating to think about. But that's what I tend to believe is that they are mostly man-made. I'm dubious and very skeptical at the timing. All of a sudden, they're normalizing this when it hasn't been normalized for, 70 years. Now, all of a sudden, they're normalizing this. So I'm very skeptical on why they're normalizing it and what that means and why we must fear them. We must fear them. Oh, maybe. Yeah, sure, maybe. Just like on Earth, there are countries you don't have to fear. There are countries you should fear. And yeah, for sure. But I don't necessarily think that all life, whether it's extraterrestrial or interdimensional, is necessarily, evil. Not necessarily, but there is a narrative that's in play that you see that we don't know what's going on. We got to be careful. Something's happening. And I'm like, okay, yeah, what is this? And then of course, that's when you start to go down, when you don't have all the information, you start to go down the conspiratorial rabbit hole, right? You start to dive into things. Oh, what's going on? All this conspiratorial stuff. And that's fun to do. Like I said, it's fun. But I will say, yeah, I do believe there is something to it. I do believe there is something to it. And I always have. I've always believed that there is enough circumstantial evidence. I do believe that, again, belief isn't evidence, but I do believe there is enough circumstantial evidence, at the very least, to suggest that there is something going on that is beyond just, even if these were all of ours, it goes a little bit beyond that. I think there is maybe some back engineering that's going on, that we have discovered something, that we know about something. And remember, these things can be compartmentalized, right? I mean, a lot of people say, well, this conspiracy can't be true, that conspiracy can't be true because thousands and thousands of people would have to know. That's not, that statement in and of itself is not actually true. It's a false statement. It is true that, that it's difficult to keep secrets from a lot of people, but all a conspiracy means is that more than one person knows a secret, right? And so, I don't believe that, thousands of people would have to be in on X conspiracy in order for it to not be true. No, that's not true. That statement in and of itself is not true because a lot of these things are compartmentalized. A lot of these things, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. I mean, you could work for me and we have a great relationship. You got a great life. Things are going fine. And all of a sudden you're like my mail guy, and I package up a, envelope of anthrax and I give it to you and you mail the letter for me to somebody I don't like, but you don't know. To you, it just looks like a regular envelope, right? You don't know what's going on. Were you in on it? Did I tell you what was going on? Did I say, hey, Bob, there's anthrax in this envelope. Don't, I'm just saying, don't. You're like, okay, yeah. Shh, I'll be quiet, Dave. No, you would just fucking take it and put it into your bag with all the other envelopes and deliver it, and you're not any the wiser. You're not any the wiser. And that's a very sort of, small, really simplistic example. But the principles are the same, right? So a lot of these things, I do think that there are, obviously secrets and need to knows. And that doesn't mean that, it's Independence Day aliens, but that there's something going on. There's something going on. I've always believed that. I used to believe in Travis Walton's alien abduction, not because of Fire in the Sky. I knew about it before the movie, but I actually emailed Travis Walton about 25 years ago, and he emailed me back. I asked him, I forget what question I asked him, but I asked him a question. He got back to me and he said that he wasn't sure. I might still have that email. But I used to be really sort of like, well, this is really interesting. And I watched the movie, of course, in 93 and read all about it. But the more that has gone on, the more that I'm dubious about the whole thing. Obviously, we don't see a lot of that stuff today because it's more difficult to fake things today. It's more difficult to go off the map today. It's more difficult. I mean, well, that's not true. It is actually, it's probably easier to fake things today because of AI and all that, but you know what I mean? There are certain things in this world, certain things that are more difficult to do because of surveillance and because of technology. And it's easier to pull the wool over people's eyes, but it's also not as easy to pull the wool over people's eyes over certain things as well. It's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword. And in the 70s, it would have been easier to disappear for a week and, I was abducted by aliens, all this kind of stuff. For today, that would be really hard to do. You know what I mean? Again, I'm not saying he's lying, but the more that I've looked into it, the more that, obviously Mike Rogers, his buddy, the guy that was driving the truck that night, came out a few years ago on social media and he said some cryptic things that led people. It was very much like he was kind of saying, yeah, it's all bullshit. I'm tired of keeping my mouth shut. There was a lot of UFO television shows on at that time. Some of the guys maybe wanted to make some extra money. There are people that have come forward said they were talking about that kind of thing, that Travis had seen the UFO documentary on at that time or something, whatever. There's a lot of, I don't know if I believe it as much as I used to. I don't know. I wasn't there. The Benny and Barney Hill story, to me, I think is far more interesting. And I tend to believe that more than I believe the Travis Walton story. The Benny and Barney Hill, if you don't know it, look it up, 1968, something like that. An interracial couple coming back from Canada, actually. They were driving through New Hampshire on their way back from a honeymoon or a holiday or something, and saw a bright light in the sky. Very weird, very strange. I'm going to paraphrase all this. They pulled over. Barney got out with his binoculars, looked up, saw this ship-type object. They got back in the car, and when they got home, they had lost about 2 or 3 hours of time. They didn't know where that time went. And it only wasn't until years later that they started to have nightmares. And they went under hypnosis and separately and described the same thing, drew the same things. Barney Hill sadly died not too long, died in the 60s or early 70s. Betty lived to only about, I think she lived 2005 or something. There's an interview with her online too. Very sweet old lady. But it was a big deal at that time because they were an interracial couple. She was white, he was black. That was fuck no at that time, right? Holy shit. Thank God we've moved past that garbage. But at that time it was what the hell? And so they were afraid to say anything. They were afraid to come out. I mean, their relationship was already frowned upon. It was that they were already looked down on because they were together. And so to come out and say, yeah, we saw a UFO. I mean, that's the last thing you want to do, right? And but the one thing that I found really interesting is that under hypnosis, Betty Hill described, and I'm paraphrasing all this, okay? You can look all this up, of course, to get the fine details. But this is one of the most interesting parts, is that Betty Hill had described a system, a planetary system, based on her hypnosis and speaking with these beings and, whatever the case is, had described and mapped and drew a map, like a map of where they were from. Again, I'm paraphrasing all this. And at that time, this is like the early 70s, at that time, people were like, well, that's okay. But that, as of right now, this system it doesn't exist. Like, we don't know where it is. And it wasn't until an amateur astronomer named Marjorie Fish, I believe, had actually found the system. She found the system. I believe it's the Zeta Reticuli system, known now as that, I believe. Maybe it was known as that before. But she found the system, like the planet or the system or whatever, that Betty had drawn. And it's kind of like, and this is true. Like, this is not, now, of course, you have people saying, oh, wow, yeah, this and that, whatever. But it is true that she did kind of, I mean, if she guessed, that was one hell of a guess, we'll say. But I find that interesting. Again, maybe the whole thing's bullshit. I don't know. But that, to me, their story, because of who they were, not that Travis Walton, not that he wasn't a normal guy, but just who they were, the tensions at that time, the world at that time, their relationship. It just was, like it just was really interesting to me. Really, really interesting to me. The whole abduction, the whole abduction phenomenon is, again, it's interesting. I don't try to get too wrapped up in it, but it is interesting. Again, like I said at the top of the show today, it's just a rabbit hole that just, it's as deep as the earth is, like the earth's crust, right? But I do believe there is truth to it. I try to be very rational, because I don't want to glom onto something too much, because I don't want to have the wool pulled over my eyes. I don't fully believe, let's just put it this way. And that doesn't mean that they aren't. But at this moment, I think I'm a little dubious and skeptical of why this information is coming out now all of a sudden, and why, the news is normalizing this all of a sudden. And it's kind of like, well, it's strange. It's a little strange. Why? Like, what is this for? What's going to happen in 5 years where we're all going to look back at this and go, okay. That makes sense. Now I know why. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just a little like, okay, interesting. Could all these be aliens? Woo, sure, I guess. Could nobody in any government, there's no black ops, there's nothing going on, no secret programs. Everybody's just like, well, I don't know. It's weird. It's fucking weird. I don't know what's going on. It's totally weird. Yeah, I guess that's possible. It's unlikely, when you look at the history of how humans like to run their worlds. Like I said, I mean, people have been the governments and the rulers of the world have manipulated their people for thousands of years. I mean, there's nothing, why? Just because, I mean, folks, Hitler wasn't even 100 years ago. Adolf Hitler and all that shit that went down and the murder of, 6 million Jewish people wasn't even 100 years ago. It wasn't even 100 years ago. Think about that. It wasn't even 100 years ago. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, no. All of us, after World War II, we're just like, everybody's virtuous. We're good. We're kind. Everybody's wonderful. Oh, there's no evil in the world. We're all wonderful. Everybody's great. It's like, I don't know. No, everybody has their motives. Everybody has their reasons. And of course, I understand the national security argument. I get it. If you have this technology, it's like, holy shit, this is fucking amazing. I don't want our adversaries to know this, so I'm just going to fucking keep it quiet and not say anything about this shit. I get that. I get that. Oh, that happens all the time. But that's been happening for years relative to the technology of the time, right? I mean, that's been happening forever. I do get that. I understand that argument. But I do believe there is something to it. I do believe there is, because our world is there's so much we know about our world and the universe, and there's so little we know about our world and the universe. And so I do think there is something to it. And again, maybe it's because of my experience from many moons ago, which is the inspiration to the script that I have completed. Feature-length film. For those of you that don't know, there's a feature-length film that I'm in development on, inspired by true events from my second year of college that deals with the paranormal, and it is a horror. It's not like it's not a slasher movie. It's not there's no blood and guts and all that kind of stuff. You know me, mood, atmosphere, all that kind of stuff. It's an elevated film, so it's more cerebral than, but that's because I wanted it to be. I wanted it to have a philosophical component to it, because that was what really was going on at that time with all of us kids. and the discussions we were having at that time and the things we were thinking about and the experiences and all that. And so, and I think because of that, it's made me a quote unquote believer. And I put believer in quotes because, again, I'm not a blind believer, but it has made me realize that I do believe there is something, whether it's, there's something more. There's enough and I call it circumstantial because obviously we haven't been able to prove it objectively yet, but there's enough circumstantial evidence that does suggest that there's something going on. Something survives the process of death. There's some other intelligence that is communicating with us beyond our world. And I'm not talking about it from a religious point of view. I'm not talking about it as a deity. I like to keep, religion out of it for obvious reasons. But I find it really interesting, really, really interesting. And I always have. And so the topic of UFOs kind of falls into a similar category as, the paranormal and ghosts and things like that. Because I do, there's, when you start to think about dimensions and interdimensional and string theory and the theory of relativity and you start to think there's something going on here. And, if it is true, I mean, look, if it is true that there are certain people in this world that have the knowledge that I'm not going to say we've been visited, although I guess you could phrase it like that, but the knowledge that we are not alone in the sense of that there are other intelligent beings that are in our world. So, you could look at it from an extraterrestrial standpoint, right? Like there's other people or there's other beings, life on other planets. And that's most likely true no matter what, with the trillions and I mean, that's just, I mean, you'd have to be a moron to say, no, we're the only one. Well, yeah, as far as we know. Nope. That's it. Just us out there. Us. Is it possible? Anything's possible, but is it probable? Not likely. But yeah, like, if it is true that they know, when I say they, I mean like certain people know, yeah, we are not alone. We have the objective, measurable evidence that there are other intelligent beings that share this world with us, but just live in another dimension, or that share the solar or, the galaxy with us and are able to, if they have that, yeah, and obviously because governments are not virtuous and because governments, because of the military industrial complex, the first thing you're going to do when you discover technology like that is go, it's mine, fuck off, it's mine. It's mine. Shh, don't tell anybody. Quiet. Don't tell anybody. I mean, that's what you're going to do, right? No government is going to go, hey, look what we found. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to make the world better. We are going to make the world, we're going to rid of the world of fossil fuels. We're going to rid of the world of oil and electricity. Ladies and gentlemen, we now know how to bring world peace. Ladies and gentlemen, get out of here. No, of course not. Of course that's not going to happen. It will never happen. It's not going to happen. It will never happen. World peace does not exist in the animal kingdom. It will not exist in the human kingdom. We are animals. We will always, could the world be more peaceful? Sure. But you will always have war and crime and it's just going to happen. I mean, it'll always be like that. So the point I'm making is that, yeah, I do think that is possible and quite likely. And I understand the national security of that. I do. I get it. I get it. I do. I get that. But if you were just to ask me straight up, like, what do you believe? Do you believe aliens are real? I would say, yes, I do. I do. But I'm not convinced. And maybe it's both. But I'm not convinced yet on which. And maybe it goes deeper. Maybe it's both and we're communicating with extraterrestrials and interdimensional beings. Maybe it's both. But the interdimensional one, and again, maybe it's just because, I've I don't know. It really, maybe because it feels more connected to my experience from many years ago. When you talk about different dimensions and all that kind of stuff. But that really, that one really intrigues me. That one really fascinates me. And I find really interesting because it feels like it makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like, it almost feels like, yeah, that kind of makes total sense. And like, they've always been here. They share the earth with us. Kind of, and so when you look at like thousands of years ago and these ancient drawings and hieroglyphs of like spaceship looking thing, you're just kind of like, well, it kind of makes sense if they've always been here, maybe. I don't know. And they could make themselves known. They could see, if they live in a different dimension than ours, they could make themselves known to us. And as quickly as they make themselves known to us, they can disappear. And we wouldn't know what to do. We wouldn't know what it was, who it was, where it was, what to do. It doesn't make sense. So you see something like fly in front of you and then it's gone. It's like, what is that? What was that? It was a UFO. Yeah, but how did it just go away? How did it just disappear? In the same ways that we in our 3-dimensional world can reach into a 2-dimensional world, put a shadow over him and he's going to go, what the hell is that? Or I can put my finger right in front of him and he's just going to see, he won't be able to see my whole finger. He'll just see like a line, because it's a 2-dimensional, because I'm coming into a 2-dimensional space. And he'll be like, what is this? What the hell is that? And all of a sudden I take my finger away and it's gone. And he's like, well, I don't understand. Like, what is that? Right. And so if there are 4th, 5th, 6th dimensional beings, they could absolutely, communicate with us in our 3-dimensional world. They could do that 100%. And we wouldn't be any the wiser. And they could do it and then remove themselves. And to us, it would look like magic, but it's really not. It's just the differences of spatial dimensions. Right. And so I find that stuff really interesting, really fascinating. I don't know, maybe that's what's going on here. I don't know. Maybe that's what's going on here. But anyways, folks, listen, let's jump over to the chat room and see what all of you are saying. Let's see what all of you are saying. Now, I know some super chats and member chats did come in. So let me get this right now. Let me get these. Hang on a sec here. Let's go over here and get these. We've got Josh McKenna, $1.99. Thank you, Josh. Josh McKenna, $9.99 says, I love the show and watch no matter what the video topic is. Thank you. Ignore trolls calling it poo in a bucket, yo. I don't think he was, maybe he was calling it poo in a bucket. I don't know. They can't tell the difference between climactic language and cinematic language. That's true. That's true. That is true, Josh. Yeah. Josh is referring to somebody that left a comment talking about how, he was just yelling and screaming and how he likes to shit in buckets, but whatever. Lord of Dogtown sends in $5, says, you're the man, Dave. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate that. Cody the Zombie, $1.99 says, now this is an episode I've been waiting for. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you, Cody. Cody follows up with another $4.99 and says, I think UFOs have always been a thing. The government has been going around collecting crashed ones so they can try to reverse engineer them. I think you're right. I really do. I think that's likely what's going on. I think that's likely what's happening with the UFOs. I think that is 100%. Again, I think most of the UFOs we see are probably, that we see, I haven't seen one. Well, actually, that's not true. I did see something weird Christmas Eve about 30 years ago. It was like this light that kind of vibrated and had like this thing around. I mean, it was weird. Anyway, it's a whole other thing. But yeah, I think that most of the stuff that is being seen, I'll say, is probably ours. And possibly back-engineered craft of some sort. That is possible. Sean Sheridan, been a member for 18 months. Amazing. Thank you, Sean. Says, aliens do exist. It's naive with an infinite universe to think there is not life on other planets. I could not agree more. I agree with you 100%. The question then becomes, at what stage is their life and what do they look like, right? Again, thanks to Hollywood, we tend to think that they're bipedal humanoid people, creatures with big gray domes and big black, almond eyes and you know what I mean? And that could be true. maybe that is what they look like, or maybe that's just what some of them look like. I mean, you look at all the theories, Nordic aliens and the Greys and these aliens and those aliens and that alien and lizard people. And I mean, it's just insane, right? But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Hair in my mouth. But I tend to agree with you. For sure. There's definitely life out there in the universe. It's just, I mean, it could be even teeming with life. Oliver Mercer sends in a very generous super chat of 50 pounds from the Olivinator. Thank you, Oliver. Really appreciate that. Says, have you heard of the NASA STS-75 something incident? There are a lot of fascinating 2 to 3 mile long UFOs that surrounded the tether. You can find this on YouTube from scientist David Sereda. The maneuvers from these objects are mind-blowing. It doesn't ring a bell, but I appreciate you pointing me onto that, Oliver, and I will look it up. Perry42 sends in $5. Thank you, Perry. Appreciate that. Also follows up with $2. Says, hey, Dave, definitely do a show on conspiracies. Oh, yeah, I might have to. You never know. Calvonics sends in $10. Thank you, Calvonics, and says, hearing Travis Walton talk on Joe Rogan was interesting. How do you feel about Bob Lazar? I have a tattoo of me and my 2 best friends being kidnapped by a UFO on my arm. That's amazing. Bob Lazar. Yeah, Again, I don't know for sure, obviously, but I tend to believe what he's saying. I do. It's his story has never changed. It makes sense. It's grounded. It's not a story like Travis Walton's. It's not. That's not to say that isn't true, but it's not a story like Travis Walton's. It's not, sensational, or it's just sort of grounded and real, and really at the end of the day, probably one of the most, Bob Lazar's story is one of the most intriguing. The reason why Bob Lazar's story, in my opinion, is one of the most intriguing, fascinating, and interesting to listen to stories is because it's so grounded, and because it's, for all intents and purposes, kind of boring. I don't mean it's not boring. I mean, it's fascinating. But I mean, in comparison to being kidnapped by a UFO for a week and then, nobody knows what, compared to Fire in the Sky, I mean, it's and so I think that's what gives him credibility. I know all about, they can't find his records at MIT and they can't, I know all about it. But I think that's what gives his story some credibility, and he's never changed his story. He's been truthful. He said the same thing for 40 years. And it's thanks to Bob Lazar that we know that Area 51 really exists in a lot of ways. And so, I mean, it is one of the more, in my opinion, it's one of the more, and you also have to look at the science as well. Not just the stories or the story that Bob Lazar tells, but the science behind it. And a lot of the things that he talks about and the science that he talked about and a lot of the things that he talked about have come true since then. And so, I mean, anybody can tell a story, you know what I mean? That's not hard to do. But I do tend to give some credence to and some credit or some, I guess some credence to Bob Lazar's story. I do tend to believe it. But I'm also open to somebody proving without a shadow of a doubt that he lied, but as of right now, yeah, he's one, in my opinion, he's one of the more credible ones. Matthew Farisi sends in $4.99. Thank you, Matthew. Says, I believe oh, by the way, Calvonics, Travis Walton's appearance on Joe Rogan, I found very, didn't make him look very good. I found Travis Walton, now maybe it's because of his age, but I thought Walton didn't come across as believable on that show, to be quite honest with you. Matthew Farisi sends in $4.99, says, I believe thousands of aliens exist in our universe and thousands more yet to exist. I'm less sure we've been visited due to how enormous space is. Well, that's just it, right? I mean, you have to think about, have we been visited? Because then they would have to get to this planet. Or are they interdimensional, right? They've always been here. You know, that's interesting. Matthew Farisi follows up another $4.99. Thanks, buddy. And says, I do think the idea of probe flying over us millions of years ago and leaving us behind in pursuit of another planet is a funny idea. You mean, I do think the idea of a probe flying over us millions of years ago and leaving us behind in pursuit of another planet is a funny idea. You mean, well, yeah, I guess so. But it depends, right? I mean, who knows? I mean, I just think some of these things, if you want to say that they're extraterrestrial and they're not interdimensional, like if they're actually extraterrestrial, a lot of these things may just be unmanned, quote unquote, unoccupied probes that we're seeing. Because it's the same thing we do, right? We send probes to other planets. Who's to say these other planets don't send probes to us? Right? And they come and they're doing their thing. And maybe that's what has been discovered. An extraterrestrial probe from another planet, from another galaxy. That's possible too. It absolutely is. And, or it's us. Foley sends in $5, says, thoughts on Spielberg's disclosure film Next. Cheers from Orleans, Ottawa. Hey, Orleans! Orleans. I know Orleans very well. Plast Orleans. I used to hang out at Plast Orleans, which is a mall for my American friends who don't know. I know Orleans very well. I used to take the 92 Plast Orleans. I think that was the bus. Used to take that to visit my friend Yana. Shout out to Yana, who lives in BC, beautiful British Columbia. She used to live in Orleans, and I used to take a bus out there. This has got to be like 1997. I used to take a bus out there to visit her. That's really cool. That's really cool. Spielberg's next film, I'm really excited about. It has been described as an event film, which is very exciting. It's delayed now, I think, till June next year. Emily Blunt. It's got a great cast. I hope it is I want less Independence Day and more Close Encounters. And what I mean by that is I don't want this to be just an alien invasion movie. He did War of the Worlds. I actually liked War of the Worlds, to be honest with you. I actually really liked it. His version. He's done that. I want this to be more, well, kind of like what I'm doing with Port Robinson Road in a lot of ways. I'm not saying mine. I mean, he's likely to have, his is an event film. Mine's an indie horror film. But the principles of like, okay, how do we tackle this material, right? Like you can tackle this material and deliver something really pedestrian, really expected. You know what I mean? Oh, aliens. Alien invasion. Oh, blow up the White House. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's fun. Those are big popcorn movies. There's nothing wrong with that. Those are fun. I like them too. But you also have an opportunity to take the same material and deliver something more grounded, more cerebral, more elevated. And I know that the term elevated is frowned upon in today's movie culture, but sorry, I like elevated movies because it makes me think. They feel more real to me. They feel more grounded. They feel, they're less sensational. I can relate to them more. And yes, it's because I also find the subject matter fascinating. Like I love it I love watching a movie when there's a scene with characters that are in a scene and they're talking about something that's, cerebral, and they're I love watching that scene play out, the drama of that scene, the performances of that scene, the subject matter they're talking about, whether it relates to UFOs or ghosts, whatever it is. I love watching that stuff play out because I can relate to that. Like I really like that. I find that interesting. And so I'm hoping that Spielberg's next movie, which was, I believe it was tentatively titled The Dish. I don't know if that still resonates or if that's still with it. I haven't heard that in a little bit. But I want it. No, yes, more Close Encounters, but actually, if you want to, I want it more Contact than Independence Day. Contact is my favorite alien, quote unquote, movie of all time. It's my favorite alien movie dealing with the subject matter of, searching for extraterrestrial life, finding, a signal, contact, it's my favorite. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, Jodie Foster, Matthew McConaughey. Love the way they did it. Love the way that they mished and mashed, real footage of Bill Clinton at press conferences and made it look like it was, part of the movie, and it lended credibility. Loved it. Because it felt real. It was grounded. It was realistic. The science was real. I love that it didn't get sensational till the end, and so it felt earned. Right? The sensationalism felt earned to me. And it wasn't even that sensational, but I just mean like the way they chose to describe how it was and what it looked like and all that kind of stuff. Really loved it. It is my favorite. So I'm hoping it's more like that. It's more of a character-driven movie than a plot-driven movie. I want more, and Spielberg is great with characters. So I want it more, cerebral, philosophical, bigger picture, life, humanity. Like, that's what I want. I don't want him to just do an Independence Day movie. Like, I just don't want that. Fuck that shit. You know what I mean? I want something more that's got more meat on the bone, that makes me walk out of the theater thinking about our world and life and who we are and all that kind of stuff. That's what I want. So that's what I'm hoping it is. Let me see here. Matthew Farisi, $4.99 says, lastly, I believe complex life will be rarer than many think, but still highly, highly likely. It takes a lot for life to develop. That's true. And we have to remember, like, in what way? We know that life needs certain things to be in place in order for it to develop on this planet. And that's all we have to go on. But maybe there's another intelligence, another form of life in the universe that doesn't need oxygen to survive, right? Life as we know it, as we understand it, and how the universe works as we know it, you need very special ingredients for complex life to live, right? And to be born and to live and to evolve and all that kind of stuff. But do those principles and rules apply to everywhere in the universe? As far as we can see, yes, but that's not very far either. And so who knows? Maybe there's a world and a planet where, oxygen is nowhere to be seen, but yet there is complex life that's there. And this life has evolved to breathe and, something that isn't oxygen. Maybe it's hydrogen or something else. And so who knows? Like, I mean, we really don't know. And that's really fascinating shit. You know what I mean? But yeah, life as we know it, as we understand it and know it, it would need these things. But as you just said, I mean, the universe is folks, the universe is so big, it literally is impossible for us to understand. And I know you think, no, I get it. No, you don't. Look, there are so many people, like, this is how we know that people don't get it. Say this is the earth, okay? This water bottle is the earth. Most people in the world believe that the moon sits right here. I mean, this is what we're dealing with here. The moon would actually be 30 feet over there. That's how far away the moon is from Earth, right? It doesn't seem like that when you look up in the sky. But if you ask most people to take a globe and a little thing of the moon and show me where you think the moon is, they would go, I don't know, maybe like right here. And it's like, no. And I understand it. I mean, I totally get it. Like, I'm not saying they're stupid people, but we don't even, like, it just, like, it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, what? It's like, no. The moon? No, it's not here. It's over there. That's where the moon is. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, like way over there. Yeah, that's where the moon is. It's like, oh shit. Like, we can't even, it's just, we can't, and that's just the moon. That's just the moon. You know what I mean? It's wild. It's wild to me. It's just insane. Like, I think it was, don't quote me on this, but I was reading about this and I was watching this documentary, and they said, if you could boil the earth down to a quarter, so take a quarter, okay, whether it's a Canadian quarter, American quarter, doesn't matter. They're the same size. You take a quarter and you place that on the ground somewhere outside, and that's the earth. It's something like this. Well, now our earth, the size of our earth, everywhere on the earth, Think of the earth. Think of all the places you can go, the countries you can go, the alleyways, the fields, the oceans, the homes, the poles, the South Pole, the North, everywhere on the earth is just our galaxy. It's like, what? The quarter is Earth, and our Earth is just the Milky Way. That's it. That's it. We can't even, it's not even, it's like, we can't do it. It's like, how do I even, it's crazy shit. It's crazy shit. It's crazy shit, folks. Let me see here. Jonathan Clancy sends in €2. Thank you, Jonathan. Says, hey, Dave, X-Files fan with the Canadian connection. It was shot in Vancouver. I'm not an X-Files fan, but when the X-Files was on in the 90s, believe it or not, I never watched it. I started to watch it in reruns, but I haven't seen a lot of the episodes. I don't know why I wasn't into the X-Files. I'm trying to think of why wouldn't, now my brother Bob was hugely into the X-Files. Now he's 11 years older than me. But he was really into the X-Files. But I never was. I didn't not like it. I just didn't, I don't know. Maybe I don't know what the hell was I doing? I don't know. But I have watched some episodes in retrospect or well, I guess, that's not really the right word. But since it went into reruns and all that, I've watched the episodes. It's fun. It's fun to watch. Yeah, no, I do like it. But I'm not a huge fan, but that's not because I don't think it's good. It's just because I never really got into it. But yeah. Dean Renner, what's going on? Dean sends in $4.99 and says, hey, Dave, I'm late to the party, but on the topic, what are your favorite alien abduction invasion movies? Oh, well, I just kind of talked a bit about it, but I'm going to say Contact is my favorite because I think it is the most realistic, grounded illustration of what I think it is likely to be. And I just love how philosophical it is, cerebral it is. It just feels, you know what I mean? Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Really like that movie as well for similar reasons. I think it's a little more obviously it's dated with the effects and things like that. Of course, 1978. But 78 or 77? 78. I think. Yeah. Year after Star Wars, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, so I really like that movie. A little more sensational, but really, really like it. Arrival, I really like too. Really liked Arrival. I went to the theater to see that. Denis Villeneuve, speaking of Canadian connections, Denis Villeneuve, the Canadian French director, or French-Canadian director, I should say, and really liked that movie a lot. Again, for similar reasons, right? It was done and executed in a way that felt grounded, realistic. It's not White House blowing up, Again, there's nothing wrong with those movies. They're fun, but I don't believe that's how it would be. Now, maybe that's how our crazy governments are going to lead us to believe it's going to be. Who knows? You never know. You want to talk about conspiracies. Who knows? But I think it feels to me it would be less likely that and more likely like Arrival and Contact. And I love that, aerial shot of just that egg-shaped craft just sitting in this big field. It's like, yeah, it's so awesome, and the way they go in and the intelligent life they're not humanoid. They're not the Greys, they're like plant-like or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, that's really, really cool. And the way that, Amy Adams, character would communicate with them, I thought was really fascinating and really cool. And it just, I like that. It feels grounded. It feels like, yeah, this is, if this actually happened, this is how it would be. And I don't think that's not to say that there aren't humanoid bipedal aliens out there. Maybe there are. And maybe these stories we hear about the Greys and the big heads, and maybe it's real. But I don't think that is necessarily true. I mean, there could be many different types of beings. I mean, look at an octopus. An octopus is incredibly intelligent. And maybe it would look like that. Now I know an octopus can't create a craft and drive a car. I get that. But I'm just saying, you just don't know what things can be made. I don't know. It's really cool to me. So Contact, Close Encounters, Arrival. I throw E.T. on there because it's such a it's a classic. But those would be some of my favorites for sure. Calvonics Music, $10. Thank you, Calvonics. Says, do you think we will ever get definitive proof of aliens to the point where it's no longer a topic of conspiracy? If yes, do you think that it'll be in our lifetime? Well, part of me wants to answer that question like this. I hope so. I'm a romantic at heart. And what I mean by that is, I like movies that have, feel like really meaningful endings or stories and that can move you, that move you and make you feel things. And I would like to believe that, our governments have our best interest in mind and that they would love to, that it would become, yes, oh, here it is. Oh, we're not alone and so what, but it's unlikely to happen that way. There's going to be a catch. There's going to be something. There's going to be something we're not told. There's, you know what I mean? It just feels kind of disappointing. I will say that I do believe, yes, that the day will come, likely in our lifetime, that we know, that we find out that we are not alone. And I do think that will be true. They will be telling us the truth that we are not alone. Now, what that means, again, extraterrestrial, like from another planet, or interdimensional, from another dimension. Because again, I go back to the 2D, 3D world, right? Whereas maybe eventually I start to communicate, with this little two-dimensional creature, and then he goes to all his friends and says, yeah, we're not alone. There's a three-dimensional creature, which is humans, living on the same planet we are. You know what I mean? And maybe we're going to find out that, yep, we're not alone. There are four-dimensional creatures or five-dimensional beings living on Earth as well. We just can't see them. You know what I mean? And so who knows? Maybe that's what'll happen. Or maybe it will be extraterrestrial. And yep, we've been visited by other planets. It's Zeta Reticuli, it's Alpha Centauri, it's, whatever. Who knows? And if that were to come out, I think it will be the truth. I'd like to believe so. I think it will be the truth. They are telling us the truth, but they're telling us the truth now for a very specific reason. Otherwise, you would have told us the truth 70 years ago. Do you know what I mean? So governments don't usually tell you the truth about anything unless it's going to serve a larger purpose and a larger agenda. And I don't mean that in a conspiratorial way. I mean that it could be any way, right? I mean, and because so much is at stake and so much is riding on a lot of things, that I don't tend to believe that the announcement will be virtuous. Because this is good for humanity. It's like, yeah, okay. Sure. Maybe. No, there will probably be a larger thing around it. But, and how do you do that? Well, you drip feed information, you slowly normalize it. And that's what's happening right now, right? It's becoming more normalized. More mainstream media is talking about it, right? There's hearings on Capitol Hill. They're starting to normalize it in the vernacular and in the zeitgeist. It's like, why are they doing that? That's my question. Why are you doing it now? Why is it being done now? You know what I mean? It's not what all of a sudden we're just virtuous now. You know what? It's time. It's time. That's not, history does not prove that that's how human beings and governments and rulers behave. And so I tend to believe that, I think we will, I think there is, again, remember, two things can be true at the same time, right? I do believe there is more to this world than we know. I do believe that there is other life out there, whether that's interdimensional or extraterrestrial or both. And I do believe we have been visited. I do. Again, belief is not evidence, but I do believe that. And that will be told, but I just want to know what the catch is. That's what I want to know. It's a tax. It's a tax. It's an alien tax. Oh, wait a minute. There's more beings that are inhabiting the planet. Well, no wonder the pollution. I mean, we gotta have a tax. No, I'm just being facetious, but I think you know my point. Fans of something. What's going on, fans of something? Sends in $5 and says, it's actually pointless to try and imagine how giant the universe is unless you want to be depressed. Hey, Dave. Hey, what's going on, Eddie? It's so true. It's like just, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy, you know, and yeah, like, I just remember watching that documentary. A quarter is the Earth, and you just set that out on your lawn outside. Now the entire Earth is our galaxy. I'm like, I can't even. Not our solar system, our galaxy, and it was something like if Earth is, I know I'm not exactly right on this, but it was something like this. So Earth is the quarter. The quarter is Earth. Earth is our galaxy. It's like, holy shit. And, you know, like the closest star, Alpha Centauri, let's say, I think that's the closest one, right? Or the closest one that's not our sun or something. Anyway, is like, so if I set it down here in Toronto, remember, the quarter is Earth. Alpha Centauri would be like, you know, in Australia or something like that. It's like, how do we even get there? How do we even begin to think about getting there? How do we, I can't even, like, it's just like, as Eddie said, it's like, it's pointless. Just shut up. Just pointless because it will depress you. It will literally depress you. And it does. It's so wild, man. It's so wild. Josh McKenna sends in $1.99, but has retracted his statement. All right. Well, thank you, Josh. I appreciate the super chat. Nonetheless, have I got all the super chats? Have I got all the member chats? I think I have. I don't think there's anything else. I don't believe so anyway. I just want to make sure. I don't think so. Let me just go back over here. Jim Gross says, hi, Dave, checking in from Pennsylvania. Just wanted to say I love your content. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, a little bit different tonight, but, you know, I like to talk about these things. You know, I think it's fun to change things up a little bit. And I know it doesn't get a lot of people watching because, you know, you're not talking about movies necessarily. But, like, I think a lot of people have, like, unless you're, you know, I don't know, you have a belief that is just very sort of not for this, but I think most people, have at least at the very least, a general interest in this, and it's fun to talk about. It's fun to speculate on. And I know that maybe I come at this from a little bit of a perspective of, you know, maybe I'm a little too, I don't know, taking the fun out of it a little bit, but I hope, but you know what? I don't think I do, because I am a believer. Like I just like to, there's only so, like, I can talk about the stories and I can talk about the incidences and, you know, Roswell and, you know, I mean, all these things, they're fascinating to talk about, but at some point you've got to go beyond that and, you know, you got to get into the weeds. You know, I mean, look at, oh God, I didn't even talk about this today, but look at crop circles. Oh my God. Now, are some crop circles made by human beings? Yes, of course. But do I think every crop circle is made by people? I don't know, man. Like, when you look at the intricacy and the detail of some of those crop circles and how big they are and and how perfect they are and how many circles are within circles are within circles, I sit there and I go, and this was done in the dark in one night with a couple of flashlights and some boards? Like, come on, man. You know, again, two things can be true at the same time, right? Maybe it started out that way. I don't know. Maybe Maybe it's all humans. Maybe it is. Maybe there's these people that have just perfected the craft to go out into a cornfield in the middle of the night and create a football field large crop circle with 975 circles that are perfectly symmetrical, mathematically correct, that do not deviate by 1 fucking millimeter. And they did it with a couple of boards, rope, and a flashlight. And they just did it in one night. That's fine. It's like, yeah, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. But is it probable? I don't know, man. Like, it's, some of this stuff is just crazy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, oh, man. Some of the crop circles you laugh at, right? Because some of them, it's like, oh, it's the Firefox logo. And you're like, that's funny. Or it's like it's the Microsoft logo. And you're like, yeah, okay, obviously somebody's gone out there and they're farting around having some fun. But there's some crop circles you look at and you're just like, this is just wild, man. Like, it's just crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Tabitha Short, one of our great moderators, sends in a member chat. Says, hey, Dave, I know Tony is into planets and stars. Have you talked to him to see if he'd be into having some episodes of the new two dudes talking about stars, planets, and other worlds, etc.? I have not talked to him about that, but I think he'd probably be down. Yeah, I think he'd probably be down. Tony's been taking some great photography. Obviously, he is a professional photographer, but he's been getting into the astrophotography lately and taking some great shots of Saturn and the stars and the cosmos, and he's just doing such a terrific job. So, I think he'd be down for it. I don't see why he wouldn't be down for it. Brandon Collins, what's going on, Brandon? One of our great mods says the only way humans will ever travel that far is by evolving into AI and shedding our organic shells. It will take millions of years to travel that far. It's true. It's true. And that's why, the interdimensional and, wormholes and bending space time. I mean, these are, the theory of relativity is, these are things that we've been not able to do yet, but in theory are true. And we might be able to do it, but you're right. I mean, doing it with a combustion rocket, that's not going to happen. I mean, listen, I've talked about this before too, but this here on my arm, this tattoo on my arm, M31, most people probably think, oh, Dave McRae, Halloween fan, Michael Myers, October 31st. It's like, no, although it can totally work that way, 100%. Can totally work that way. No, it's the astrological, I don't know if this is the right term, but it's the astrological code for the galaxy of Andromeda. Andromeda is known as M31. And I've been fascinated with the galaxy of Andromeda my entire life. And it is, this is what I mean. It's so mind-boggling. The galaxy of Andromeda is the closest galaxy to the Milky Way. That's our closest galaxy. The galaxy of Andromeda. And in something like 20 billion years or whatever it is, or 2 billion years or 3 billion, whatever it is, a few billion years at the very least, it will collide with the Milky Way to create a super galaxy or supernova. No, that's a star, right? Super galaxy, whatever they call it. Our galaxies will eventually collide and we won't be here, so who the fuck cares? But it's going to happen. And because it's traveling, like it's speeding towards us at like, I don't know, 1,000 kilometers every second or something ridiculous like that. But the galaxy of Andromeda, as far as we know, we've measured, not with tape, mind you, but it is roughly about, I think it's 2.9. Is it 2.9 or 2.4? Hang on a sec. How far is Andromeda? 2.537, excuse me, 2.537 million light years away. Now, when you say that to the average person, that doesn't mean anything to them, right? Like they're just like, okay, it's 2.5 million light years away. Yeah, that's a long way away. They don't know what a light year is. They don't know they just know that's a long way away, right? And I think some people might just by default, just think of like miles. Oh, it's 2.5 million light years away. Yeah, that's like 2.5 million miles. That's like a long way away. It's no, 2.5 million light years. So 1 light year is the distance that light can travel in 1 year. In 1 year. Are you ready for this? For those of you that don't know, for those of you who know are like, oh yeah, here he goes. This is wild. So the galaxy of Andromeda, okay, so again, 1 light year is the distance that light can travel in 1 year. Okay. So if the galaxy of Andromeda is 2.537, is 2.5 million light years away from Earth, that means that it would take us, human beings, 2.5 million, not years, light years, 2.5 million years, yes, years, 2.5 million years to get to Andromeda, but traveling at the speed of light. Not just 2.5 million years, 2.5 million years traveling at the speed of light, which we cannot do. That's how far away Andromeda is. And it's the closest galaxy to us. The closest. Like, we can't even, like, that doesn't even, what does that even mean? We can't even, it's so, like, it is, and we're just like, oh yeah, 2.5 million. No, you don't understand. No, I get, no, you don't get it. That's what I want to say to some people. No, you don't understand. Like, I'm literally that guy in Scanners. Like, literally. Every time I think about the cosmos and the distance and light years and galaxies and billions of years, whatever, my head literally is the character in Scanners. Like, literally, that's what happens. It's crazy. It's crazy. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And so, yeah, it would take us 2.5 million years to get to Andromeda traveling at the speed of light. It would probably take us billions of years if we were traveling in your car, or trillion. I mean, and we don't even understand that. We can't even understand it. It's insane. Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. The Violator 862 sends in a very generous super chat of $19.99. Thank you, Violator. Appreciate that. Says, thinking back to when I was a kid, I was in the car with my grandma when I looked out the window and saw this spherical object in the sky. Ooh, I'm liking this. I'm spitting on my mic. I like it so much. What the hell's going on here? Then it splits into 3 identical objects and vanishes into the sky. Crazy stuff. Ooh, very cool. That's a cool experience to have had. Now, are you sure you weren't dreaming? You weren't dreaming. You weren't, hallucinating. You remember it. You were lucid. You were there. You were of clear mind. You were very cool, man. That's pretty cool. That's a cool experience to have. I don't know. Tabitha's got the heads exploding emojis. It's true. It's true. It's like, what the hell? Like, I don't even know. Ali Girl says, I might have learned something in science if Dave would have been my teacher. I ain't no scientist, but I do find these topics really interesting and fun. And it's part of our world, man. It's part of, like, it's part of our existence, and it really makes you, it's just so humbling and how small we really are, it's an overused cliche, but it's true. Muzzy Films sends in $10. Thanks, Muzzy Films. I like that. Muzzy Films. I like that name. Dave, you were talking earlier about rain, about how we understand now as a modern society its purpose and function, whereas before it seemed magical. Ponder, however, who designed the water cycle? I'm not quite sure what you mean. Who designed the water cycle? I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. Maybe you can be a little more specific for me. And then I'll try to give you an answer as best as I can. The water cycle? I mean, like the tides and things? I'm not quite sure what you mean. Help me understand, and I will happily give an answer. It's so true. Yeah, and that's the thing too. Here's another thing. Yeah, sorry, I was just reading Brandon Collins' comment there again. It says, by the way, you could travel in a straight line that whole way, and you're almost guaranteed to never collide with anything because there's almost nothing in space. It's totally true. One of the things that I find interesting, and I used to think this way too. I used to think this way too. So NASA will sometimes take photos of the Earth, right? And you'll see the Earth. And there are people that, because most people don't understand the scale and the size and, of the Earth, as well, and orbit, and, there's like, I don't know how many satellites are in space, there's space junk, and there are these sort of animations and diagrams that will show the Earth, and it will show the Earth with all this junk around it, like all these little, satellites and probes and junk all around the Earth, and it makes it look like if we were to go into space, we'd be going, holy shit, whoa, holy crap, whoa, what's going on? And that's not what it is. Like again, I'm not a scientist. This isn't an exact, to scale. But if this was the Earth here, right? If this was, I wish I had something round. But if this water bottle was the Earth, the space station is in low Earth orbit. So you wouldn't be able to see the space station. Like it's literally the size of like the tip of your fingernail, like somewhere on here. It's not up here. The space station's not circling the Earth up here. It seems like that when you look at the live feed, right? Because of the scale of everything and how small we are. But the space station is actually like real, like it's like you wouldn't even be able to see it, right? So a lot of the satellites that we have, they're here, they're like it's like orbit Earth. There's low Earth orbit. There's, I don't want to say high Earth orbit. I don't think that's a thing, but it's not like all the junk is not huddled around Earth like this. Do you know what I mean? Like there's vast, there's so much space. There's so much space. Even, and I learned this too, even asteroid fields are not really like they are in The Empire Strikes Back. Now you might get some maybe that are out there that are like that. But asteroid fields, again, it's within proximity in terms of like, it's relative to the distance in space, right? You can have an asteroid field where you see an asteroid and then you don't see anyone around you, but you're in an asteroid field. And the next asteroid closest to you might be like, I don't know, 30,000 kilometers away. Do you know what I mean? And now we're going to go, oh, I thought asteroid field was like The Empire Strikes Back. Na, 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 whoa, na, 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 na. And it's like, yeah, not really. You know what I mean? And it's just because, again, it's about the scale and the size and the distance but to us, that would be an asteroid field, right? Because of how it's all relative. I'm not a scientist. I'm probably not doing a really good job at explaining this, but I think you know what I'm trying to say. And when you learn about that, like I find this stuff really interesting. When I learned about this, because I too used to think, well, how come nothing crashes into the space station? If we have 50 dead satellites just circling the Earth, and we have another, 250 satellites, circling the Earth, and all this space junk that's circling the Earth, how come nothing hits the space station? Well, because the space station is in low Earth orbit, and the satellites are still another, 400,000 feet away. Do you know what I mean? It's like another 30 kilometers away or something. It's like, oh yeah, it's not all huddling around Earth like this, it's out here as well, and it's out here as well, and it's fascinating, man. It's really, really cool. Really, really cool. Anyway, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now, but I find this stuff really interesting. Muzzy says, the water cycle, evaporation, rain. We all understand rain when we see it, but the concept seems too perfect not to be created. Well, look, I think, I think we have to understand that there's a gigantic leap from this is interesting, and I wonder how this came to be. There's definitely an intelligence, right, to the universe. There's an intelligence to the universe. There's an intelligence to, how things evolve and patterns and DNA and all that kind of stuff, which is really, really cool. But I think that to then make a gigantic leap to it was a god or a deity, I think is where I have an issue. I'm not going to sit here and say that there isn't a God because I don't know. There could be one, but I don't know if there's one. And remember what I said, I don't know if you tuned in late, but at the beginning of the show today, I said having a belief in something is not evidence of that something's existence. So lots of people believe in something. We all have faith in something, but the faith and the belief in and of itself is not the evidence, right? The evidence has to be measured by the 5 senses: taste, touch, smell, see, and hear. As far as we know right now, that's all we have to go on. There may be other senses, right? Telepathic, other dimensions, all that kind of stuff may become very common as we evolve as humans over the years. But as of right now, that's all we know, right? And so, in terms of rain and evaporation and how things move and the cycles and all that, I'm not a meteorologist, I'm not a scientist, but I'm pretty sure that there are scientific explanations for it and evolutionary explanations for it and how and why that has happened over, thousands, millions, billions of years. And, but it's really interesting. And again, that's not to say that there isn't a God of some sort. There might be, but there's no objective evidence for it. Unless you want to just say, well, but the universe is so perfect and look at all this. It must be it can't be anything else but an objective creator. Maybe, but maybe not. Right? Like, we don't know. I think it's important that we don't just make that giant leap. I think it's possible. You never know. But I'm somebody that, again, I'm not a very religious person. I never have been. I've only been to church for weddings and funerals. So that's just how I grew up. I don't have anything, against people who want to practice their religion. I think that's great. All the power to you. I think religion can do some wonderful things. I think it can do some pretty awful things. And just like anything in life, but I think there's a balance. But yeah, I would say that, there's again, I'm not a scientist or a meteorologist, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of that has already been scientifically explained of why that would be. But it's a fascinating topic though, isn't it? It's really, really fascinating. Things evolve, right? Things evolve over millions and billions and billions and billions of years, so yeah, I don't really buy into the religious story aspect of how the earth was and I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying in terms of the whole creator, a guy sitting on a cloud with a white beard creating the world in 7 days, that kind of stuff. Not really my thing. Josh McKenna, $1.99 says, have you seen the show Resident Alien? I have not. The Violator 862 sends in $4.99, says, have you ever seen the show Destination Truth hosted by Josh Gates? Yes. Years ago. One of the best, if not the best paranormal shows out there. I actually did believe it or not, I did a promo, one of my Voice Arts Awards nominations in 2017, I believe, was for a promo I did for one of their episodes. And it was, I wonder if I have it here. It was called Boo Brunch. Not the episode wasn't. So for about 7 or 8 years, I was the voice of a network here in Canada called T&E. And they were initially called Travel and Escape, and then they changed it to just mean Totally Entertaining. Okay. And one of the shows that I think it was Destination Truth. Did he have another show? Anyway, he was the host of the show, and they were doing, the network did a couple of promos for the show, and the show would be airing around lunchtime. And so they wanted to call the segment, the block of shows, Boo Brunch, right? Like Boo brunch, you know, like, oh, I'm scared, boo brunch. It was just kind of funny. Or I guess around the brunch hour, you know, 11. And let me see if I can bring this up, actually. I wonder if I have it on my, because I have a voiceover YouTube channel that I never use, but it's got some of my stuff on there. Anyway, this promo got me my second nomination for a Voice Arts Award, Best National TV Promo. And let me see. Hang on. It's got to be on here, right? It's a while ago, though, now. Like 2000. Yeah, there it is. Okay. I'll play this for you. 1 second. And, of course, I'm using the trailer voice for it. So 1 second. Let me show you this. 1 minute. Oh, hang on. Hang on a sec. I'm on there too. Okay, let me put myself down here. All right. And let me do this. Kind of see that there? You can kind of see that, right? Okay, 1 sec. Okay. So this is, I don't know if this is, oh, no, it is. It says it here. Okay, so it's for 3 shows. The shows are Ghost Hunters, Destination Truth, and A Haunting. So the blog, it's a 30-second ad and it's a compilation of clips from Ghost Hunters, Destination Truth, and A Haunting. And I uploaded this 8 years ago to my other channel. And this was what got me my second nomination. So here you make sure everything's turned up here. Here you go.
Don't be a chicken and choke on your chicken lunch while watching Boo Brunch.
What the is that?
An afternoon fright fest filled with midday madness that'll make you want to call your mama.
I want out of this house!
It's a deadly daylight delight of paranormal terror.
I've never seen anything like that.
There'll be no nappies for you after Boo Brunch. Weekdays starting at 11 on TNE.
There you go. There you go. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Boo Brunch, baby.
They followed
Boo
the
Brunch.
direction and writing.
Boo Brunch. Oops. The thing went on to the next video. Boo Brunch. So yeah, no, I am very aware of Destination Truth. Okay, have I got all the super chats? I just want to make sure. Have I got them all? I believe I have. I think I have. I think so anyway. Go back over here. What's time? How much time we got? What am I? I'm coming up 2 hours, right? Yeah, almost at the 2 hour mark. But yeah, no, I really liked it. I watched the show a few times. I watched it a few times. I thought it was pretty fun. Let me see here. Guitarist Dog says, Dave, what are your thoughts on American Sumerian history? I'm not an expert or know much about it. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, oh dear, I want to call my mama. That's it. You want to call your mama. Oh yeah, that was a great, that was a fun spot to do. A very fun spot to do. Jonathan Clancy says, the photo of the universe that was recently revealed made me think we know absolutely nothing about it. It's totally true. It's true though, isn't it? You know, you look at things like that and you're just like, I just don't know. I don't know anything. You know, there's so much, all we can go on is what we do know. And there's so much we don't know. And, you know, I think sometimes maybe I've been accused in my life of not picking a side, right? You know, and it's like, well, I don't do it as a cop out. Like there's just things I don't know. Like I've always been that way. I've always been, there's things I don't know. Again, I'm not a religious person at all. So that never was my life. That never came to being. So I never look at it from that perspective. I always try to look at it as objectively as I possibly can. When we're talking about life and the universe and existence and aliens and things like that. But you're right. The chances are we constantly evolve all the time. We evolve our measurements, we evolve our science, we evolve our understanding of the universe and ourselves all the time. But all we can do is understand what we know now. Right? But that can change once new evidence comes in, new science comes in. We're able to create new technologies that allow us to see things, to experience new things. Right now, the fifth spatial dimension is science fiction. It's theoretical, but, in 100 years, maybe even less, it might be totally normal and absolutely scientific and in textbooks. You know what I mean? But right now we only can go as far as the tools that we have. And yeah, it's interesting. It's a great topic though. All right, folks. Well, listen, that is going to do it for this episode of McRae Live. I want to thank you all for tuning in and, hanging out with me while we talk about aliens and space and UFOs and UAPs and abductions and the world and life and the universe and what it means. And, it's fun. It's fun. It was a good show. And what I liked about the show too is that, it's I don't know, it gets me excited. Like, these are topics that I'm excited about. These are topics that, as you can clearly see just from how long I went on, I like talking about this stuff. It's interesting. And I think there's a way to talk about this kind of stuff, where you don't veer off, because these kinds of shows, you could very easily veer off into sort of a very religious sort of view, or a very sort of I don't know, all kinds of views, right? And I think it's important that we keep things civil and grounded and just kind of talk about it as objectively as we possibly can, and share our thoughts and our feelings and just do it in a very civil manner. And I'm very pleased with the chat room today, and very pleased hopefully I'll be pleased with the comments hereafter. Because it's fun. It affects all of us, and nobody knows. No, it's true. We don't know. Nobody really knows for sure, what's going on or what happens after we die or what the case is. We don't know. There are theories that have more plausibility based on the information we have and based on what we know right now. But at the end of the day, until we can actually go there or have objective measurable evidence that can be replicated time and time and time and time again, they will continue to be theories. And some theories hold more water than others, obviously, of course, 100%. But it's fascinating to talk about. And I love stories like this. I love movies that talk about this kind of stuff. It's just very, very exciting. I love talking about this stuff. It's fun. Bigfoot is next on the agenda. No. Well, maybe we'll talk about Bigfoot. I don't know. I'm not as excited about that one though. It's interesting, but I'm not as excited about that one, but there'll be other topics like this. It's fun. It's fun to talk about this stuff. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, of course, to all the super chats that came in tonight. For the non-super chats as well, the member chats, I really appreciate it. Thank you to my great moderators for doing what you guys do. I really, really appreciate it. I see Tabitha Short and, of course, Brandon Collins here tonight. Thank you so much for doing what you guys do. Appreciate it very much. This was a fun stream. And I had a lot of fun talking about it and sharing my thoughts on it. And, again, I could keep going. I could go and go, but I thought, 2 hours is a good time. It's good. Anyways, folks, listen, if you're watching after the fact, jump into the comment section and let me know your thoughts on UAPs, UFOs. What do you think's going on in the world right now? Do you believe it? Do you not believe it? Do you think there's something else going on? Are you skeptical of the timing? Do you think they're aliens from other worlds? Is this an extraterrestrial thing from other planets? Or is this an interdimensional thing from right here on Earth. And maybe they've always been here. We just can't see them because they're from another... Ooh, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on all of that and anything I had to say here today in the comment section below. Allie Girl says, I'm a Bigfoot gal. Ooh, Oliver Mercer, Loch Ness, perhaps? That's another one that's been kind of debunked, though. You know what I mean? Like, that's another one, the Bigfoot. Bigfoot and Loch Ness, you could probably do in the same show. Maybe we do that. Maybe do like a Bigfoot, Loch Ness, you know, what's that one here in Canada? The Chupacabra? Is that the one here in BC? I can't remember. Maybe we just do a bunch of a monster show. I don't know. But folks, yeah, have a great rest of your Monday night. And make sure you keep looking up to the skies. Make sure you keep looking up to the skies because you never know what you might see. You never know. All right, folks, I'll talk to you later. In the meantime and in between time, I will talk to you soon. Cheers.